Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to show you I built my Guillow's RC conversion. So this is a Guillow's 24-inch Cessna 170 Balsa Kit. I bought it on Amazon for 22 bucks. And it's made to, it says flying model on it, but it's far from that. It comes with a rubber band powered propeller that you can actually add onto it. So it's just got a rubber band with a propeller that you can put in there, and then it's made to be covered in tissue paper, but none of the control surfaces move at all, so it's all just fixed wing, fixed tail, fixed rudder, and it's got some plastic wheels that comes with. So it's made just to kind of spin the prop and then just kind of throw it, and hopefully it lands or doesn't break or whatever. It does show on the box here that you can add electric power, gas power, or the rubber band power that it's included with. I went ahead and converted it to electric and modified the entire wing and the rudder section and put control surfaces in it with a receiver and a brushless motor. But it's quite a bit extra work than the kit, the plans come with. It takes a lot more work to make it flying. So I just wanted to show you guys my process on how I did it and some different techniques I used to build the model. So here's the plane here. So it looks in the same size as the airplane it comes with, because I built it all according to the plans. I just added, as you can see here on the top of the wing, it's got ailerons here, and then the flaps, and then the rudder. So this is all, you have to cut all this out. When you get the kit, it's just a fixed rudder and a fixed elevator. And then I added control rods in there for the rudder and elevator. And then I added I used different wheels than the kit came with. The kit came with like some really small little plastic wheels. And I wanted to be able to make it actually like a plane that you could actually go out and fly really well and fly on some dirt and stuff. As you'll see in the footage of today, I go out and take it out like on a baseball field and stuff, so I like to have these a little bit softer wheels and they're a little bit bigger. I added a light kit on it, and it's got a landing light on one side. It's traditional like 170, it's got a landing light on one side and not on the other. I use the decals that the kit came with, and I used a monocoat as the covering rather than the tissue paper that it comes with, because I wanted it to be a little bit stronger. And I built the wing a little bit different. Like, it's called for like to have stringers and stuff in the wing, but I didn't actually put the stringers in, as you should see in the build video here in a minute. So I wanted to have a little bit stronger material to cover it with. The nose piece is completely custom. It came with like a plastic nose like this that you just cut out and then you just glue it on there. But I wanted to have easy access to the battery, so I could just take it out to the field and fly it a lot and be able to take the nose piece off like that and replace the battery pretty easy. So this is a magnetic cover that just kind of snaps right into place on the top there. It's got a brushless 180 size motor in it. So this is the tissue paper that it came with, and it's really thin material, and you're supposed to put it on there and then use some kind of technique to like cover it. I don't know. I just didn't want to use it because I thought it'd be too thin and wouldn't be really good for flying. So I use this ultra coat that you can just get down to any local hobby store, and then you just use a heat iron and a heat gun to shrink it onto the model. So I went ahead and made the top wing removable. So if you see on the struts here, I modified the struts so that you can use just a Phillips head screwdriver and remove each strut off both sides. And then on the top here, there is 2 flathead screws, plastic screws. You just pull both screws out, and then the whole wing pulls off of there. And then you can disconnect the wiring in the wing so that you can take the wing off and work on any wiring that you need to. Okay, so now let's start to work on building it. So the first step, as always, for building a balsa plane is just get a piece of foam board and lay it out over your workstation, tape it down, and that's used so that way you can pin the balsa wood over your blueprints onto your workspace. So there it comes with blueprints. You just lay those out. I taped them down, cover them with a piece of wax paper, so that way when you glue the parts, the balsa parts don't adhere to your plans. So for now, I'm just building the plane just as the instructions call for the fuselage, anyways. And then here I'm building the elevator, and I build the outside part just as the plans call for. They have these pieces cut out with laser cut tools, but then for the part that I had to modify, it was the hinge. So there's two pieces that go horizontal that the actual elevator hinges on, and then along with the stabilizer there too, those horizontal pieces there. I had to add those in there, so that way I would have a joint to cut and make the actual surface bend. Otherwise, it was just a solid piece. So now I'm going to start working on building the wing. And again, I'm just building it just as the plans call for now. As far as the top wing goes, I don't actually put the stringers on. There's little notches in the top of the rib sections, and it calls for adding stringers all the way along that part of the wing, and I didn't want to add those on there because I didn't want it to when I cover it with monocoating to have those lines running across the top of the wing. And I knew that I was going to cover it with monocoating, which is going to be a little stronger than the tissue paper. Okay, so now I have all the basic pieces all made, just like the plans call, and now it's time to start kind of modifying it. And this is where you start to kind of go away from the actual plans and start to actually kind of build just what needs to be done to make it work. So as far as right now, I'm working on the wing. So I'm actually joining the two halves of the wing together. And so I run the spar all the way through the wing and then glue the two wing sections together. And then there you can see I actually beefed up the spar. So I actually made it a lot thicker all the way along the spar to make it a little stronger. And the wing ended up being completely flat, which is kind of how I wanted it. I didn't want to build it with any kind of dehedral, so that way it could be slightly aerobatic. So now the wing portion is done for now. I gotta still add the ailerons and the flaps, but now I'm going to start working on the landing gear. So these landing gear are from a Timber, and I had to build a kind of a brace to mount it on there. And I also used a tail wheel too from the Timber. And I'm just working on sanding all the parts nice and smooth, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the light kit on it. But first I'm going to modify the wingtip. The wingtip had using like some stringer pieces and kind of making some weird looking end wingtip, so I just built it up with balsa wood and then trimmed it down and sanded it nicely, so that way I could fit a nice LED light in the end there and cover it with monocoating. So this is a pretty generic just light kit. I bought it, just has 2 beacons, 2 strobes, 2 landing lights, and I ended up, it came with 5mm lights. I cut them off and I added 3mm lights, so that's just some regular wire and just soldering on these new lights and heat shrinking it together. And then I just start putting in the strobe and the nav lights, and then I had to drill little holes all the way through the rib section to run all the wiring. So that's what I'm doing there, and then I'm putting the landing light and the taxi light in on the left side of the wing. And I'm actually going to wire that landing light and taxi light to an actual switch, because it's going to be a 5-channel with the flaps, but then 6-channel including the light, so I'll be able to click that light on and off with my 6-channel on the radio. And then I'm working on adding a bracket right there for the beacon on the tail. And I just used 1 beacon. I just put 1 beacon on the top and the back, which is what I'm wiring right there. And then I'm working on fitting the wing. fitting the wing on the top was a little difficult because I did want to make it removable. So I built up a part that would slide into the back part of the fuselage and then use screws to hold the front part of the wing down to the fuselage. So that took a little bit of work to get all that to fit correctly. Now I'm starting to work on trying to fit the servos and seeing how the servos will fit in there. And now that I know the actual location that I can put them in, it kind of gauged how big I can make the flaps and the ailerons based on the size of the servo, because I can see how big the servos, how much room the servo is going to take in the wing, and that can determine how much room I need for the servo to be mounted in the wing. And then just cut the ailerons out and the flaps, and now I have to build up that part of the wing there. I'm just using some balsa wood, get a local hobby store to build this part up so that I can hinge the flaps and the ailerons. And you can see it actually stuck up. That wood was actually thicker than I needed to, and I wanted that on purpose. That way I could build it up and then just sand that down and make it nice and smooth along with the top part of the rib of the wing. And then it obviously takes more modification with each one of those pieces to make the flaps and the aileron to work. I'd actually, you can see there on the left, on top left, or now on the top right, there's that aileron. You have to add an extra rib basically on the far right and the far left, and on the flap I just left it so that way all I have to do is build the part that it hinges off of. Now I'm going to put the blueprints back down and then put the wing back over the blueprints, so that way I can use that as a guide, so that way the surface of the wing still stays the same width, because I'm modifying that part of it, so I can just keep sanding it down and fitting that in place until it fits along with the line on the blueprint. So that way the wing keeps the same original shape, but now it just has the flaps and ailerons installed. So now that I got that all set up, I'm going to go ahead and add the servos. So obviously I have to add in a piece of balsa wood there for the servos to sit on, and then I just use the caulking method to glue the servos in. And then again I have to drill small holes all the way through the rib sections to get the servo wiring in. And actually cut the lead off of the connector off the servo, so that way I can shove the wire through there and drill a smaller hole, so I don't have to have such a quite as large a hole to get that servo wire through. And I end up using 2 servos, one for each aileron, and then I use 1 servo for both flaps. So I just use a metal linkage to connect the flaps together. And I'm using plastic hinges because they hinge really nice and smoothly. They're not like those ones that you put the CA glue on and it hardens. You can soften them up, but with this light of build and the small servos, I just didn't want to have that much resistance on the flaps and the ailerons. So now this is another really tricky part. Probably one of the hardest parts about it was building the motor mount and the battery holder. So I was having to use the plastic nose cowling that it came with and try to measure up how the front would sit and what depth to set the motor, so that way I can mount the motor in the right place and have the prop and everything sit in the right spot. And then along with that, I ended up wanting I want the battery to sit there in the front, in front of the windshield, between the windshield and the front motor, so that way I can get to the battery nice and easily. And here I'm working on wiring the lights, the landing lights, and the strobes and nav lights in. I used that controller and I mounted it right there in the wing, and then I'm just cutting the wires and soldering back onto the board. And then here is the rudder and the elevator servo. You have to make those brackets there that I'm screwing it into out of balsa wood. And then here's the front. I'm just using some balsa wood and reshaping that so that way I don't use the plastic nose cowling that it comes with. And then now I'm starting to cut out where I want the battery tray to be at. So that tray there, I want to make sure it's forward enough that the windshield will still fit, and then it's large enough that the battery will fit in there. And then obviously have to build it back up to make it all work correctly. So there I'm adding some more balsa wood there, and then I have to rebuild the part that I just cut out to make it work correctly. And then add magnets to that. I just added 2 small magnets so that way I could just easily remove that. And now the plane's pretty much all done, ready to go, so now I'm going to start covering it. I'm just using some Ultra Coat white, and I'm using my Hanger 9 heat iron and Hanger 9 Pro Trim tool to do all the ironing, and then I have a heat gun also. So just first work on the tail, and then for hinging the tail for the rudder and the elevator, I ended up using just some hinge tape. You can get it at like a hobby store. It's for really lightweight builds. I tried to cut into the actual wood that I used, but it was just so thin that there's just no way I could put any kind of other hinge on there other than putting some sort of tape over top of that. And it worked really nicely because it's very easy hinge to move, so that way the push rods for the control surfaces, they don't bend inside the fuselage. It actually moves the control surface really nicely. Okay, so now that I have all the pieces covered, it's time for final assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and start to add the flaps and the ailerons in place, and then it's time to start adding some decals. So I'm going to use the decals that the kit came with, and to use them you just have to soak them in hot warm water. Just use like a cake tray that was nice and large and flat, and just put a little bit of water in there, soaked them in water, and then the decals pull off pretty nicely. This one here actually ripped a little bit, but still, if it rips, you can just still put the pieces back together and fit them nicely together. After I got done with it, I covered it with a decal cover just to keep them stuck down nicely. And now it's all working. I'm putting the struts back together, and I screwed the wing on the top. And now I'm going to take it out and do some taxi checks. So look out for my next videos. I'm going to go ahead and add some more footage of the plane, and I'll also upload the maiden flight. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hit that thumbs up if you guys like these videos, and we'll see you guys in the next one.